Kingsley let the empty tray of oranges slip from his grasp, falling with a dull thud. He sank to his knees beside the grave, the cool earth pressing against his trembling hands. "Mama," he whispered, his voice breaking, "I miss you. I'm trying. I really am, but it's so hard. Too hard." The tears erupted, scorching and unstoppable, as he collapsed onto the grave, gripping the parched earth as if it held the power to bring his mother back. "I don't understand why God took you and Papa from me," he choked, his voice splintered with sorrow. "Auntie Susan doesn't like me, Mama. She beats me. She starves me. I don't want to stay with her anymore. I want to come to you, to be with you." 8-year-old Kingsley trudged barefoot along the dusty, narrow road, a tray of oranges wobbling precariously on his small head. Red dust clung to his tiny, calloused feet, and his oversized shorts hung awkwardly from his frail frame, soaked with sweat. His heart weighed heavy with sorrow, his stomach growled in hollow protest, and tears hovered on the brink of falling. But he dared not stop. The sharp echo of harsh voices and cruel taunts played relentlessly in his mind, urging him forward like a hunted prey. "Kingsley, if you come back without selling everything, you go chop cane tire." The words echoed in his mind, twisting his stomach, not with hunger this time, but with the raw fear of her whip. Her sharp tongue often cut deeper than her lashes, leaving wounds that no one could see. Since his parents' death, she had taken him in, not with love, but with a warped sense of duty that felt more like a punishment than a refuge. Every day since then, he had trudged through the town from dawn till dusk, hawking oranges with weary determination. His little legs ached with every step, but there was no room for rest. Finally, he stopped under the sparse shade of a withered mango tree, the only refuge from the merciless sun. His trembling fingers brushed the sweat from his brow, smearing dirt across his pale, tear-streaked face, a silent testament to his struggle. The tray perched on his head felt like a mountain pressing him down, yet he pushed forward. He had no other choice. A woman strolled past, her wrapper snugly tied around her waist, casting a fleeting glance in his direction. For a fleeting moment, Kingsley hoped the woman might take pity on him, perhaps buy just one orange, but she merely shook her head and hurried on, her footsteps fading into indifference. "Oranges for sale! Sweet oranges!" he called out, his voice feeble, barely rising above a whisper. No one stopped. The streets buzzed with life, vibrant, chaotic, and relentless, a rhythm Kingsley no longer felt he belonged to. Every step he took was shadowed by memories of his parents, clinging to him like a ghost he couldn't shake. His father, Mr. Gabriel, a skilled carpenter, had been his greatest hero. Kingsley could still picture himself as a boy, sitting beside him in the fading light, watching in awe as his strong hands transformed plain wood into masterpieces. The deep, warm timbre of his father's laughter lingered in his mind, a bittersweet melody that refused to fade. Then came that fateful day. A relentless cough stole his father away, leaving Kingsley and his mother to face the world alone. Attention, please. Dear viewers, as you continue to watch, kindly share your opinion on this story and tell us which country you are watching from. Also, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this video to your loved ones. Thank you so much. Kingsley's gentle mother became his anchor, the unwavering force holding him steady. She worked tirelessly, frying and selling akara at the market to ensure he had food to eat and a chance at an education. Kingsley could still feel the warmth of her embrace, hear the lullabies she sang to him at night, and catch the faint aroma of fried beans that clung to her clothes. Yet life, in its unrelenting cruelty, had not spared her either. Just a year after his father's death, illness claimed his mother too. Kingsley could only stand by helplessly as her strength ebbed away, her once bright, lively eyes fading until they closed forever. On the day of her burial, he hadn't cried, not a single tear. Shock and heartbreak had left him numb, too shattered to grieve. But now every tear he'd held back then poured freely, mingling with the sweat and dust streaking his face as he trudged down the endless road. "Sweet oranges for sale," he called again, his voice trembling, cracking with desperation. Finally, a man on a bicycle slowed down, handing him a crumpled Naira note in exchange for 3 oranges. "Oh, thank you, sir," Kingsley whispered, bowing slightly. But the man didn't even glance his way. The sun sank lower in the sky as Kingsley sold the last orange, a fleeting wave of relief washing over him, but it was short-lived. He knew that the money he'd earned wouldn't be enough for Auntie Susan. She would always find something to complain about, some excuse to punish him. He set off on the arduous journey home, each step weighed down by a crushing fatigue. As he neared the cemetery at the town's edge, his pace slowed, his heart heavy. His mother's grave lay there, silent and still. He hadn't meant to stop. He knew Auntie Susan would be livid if he was late, but the ache inside him was too much to ignore. Something deep within called him to the humble, unmarked mound where she lay. Kingsley let the empty tree fall to the ground and sank to his knees beside the grave. The earth felt cold beneath his trembling hands. "Mama," he whispered, his voice breaking. "I miss you. I'm trying, Mama, but it's so hard. Too hard." The tears came then, hot and uncontrollable, spilling down his cheeks as he grasped the dry earth, as though it might somehow bring her back to him. "I don't understand, Mama. Why did God take you and Papa away from me?" He sobbed, his words choked with pain. "Auntie Susan doesn't love me. She hurts me, Mama. She doesn't feed me. I can't go back there. I don't want to stay with her anymore. I want to come to you." The wind stirred gently, rustling the leaves of the nearby trees and sending them drifting toward Kingsley. It felt like a soft caress, as if his mother's spirit was reaching out to comfort him. He closed his eyes, his frail body trembling with each breath. The world around him seemed to blur and fade as he imagined her voice, her laughter, her arms holding him close. In that moment, she was alive again, smiling, whispering that everything would be all right. But the illusion was fleeting, the wind stilled, and with it the comforting warmth vanished, leaving only the heavy, suffocating silence of the graveyard. Kingsley slowly sat up, the weight of his duty to return to Auntie Susan's house pressing heavily on his chest. He knew if he lingered any longer, her anger would be swift and brutal. He wiped his eyes with the back of his hand, then gathered the empty tray. "Mama, I'll come back tomorrow," he whispered, his voice almost a breath. "I'll tell you everything. I love you." As he stood to leave, a sharp growl from his stomach echoed through the stillness, a painful reminder that he hadn't eaten all day. He clutched his belly, trying to ignore the gnawing hunger. The road home loomed before him, stretching out like a cruel reminder of his never-ending struggle. He had no idea how much longer he could bear this life, but for now, all he could do was keep moving forward. Kingsley's heart pounded in his chest as he neared Auntie Susan's house. The soft glow of the oil lamp seeped through the small cracks in the wooden door, casting faint shadows. His small hands quivered as he pushed it open, the creak of the hinges loud enough to announce his arrival. Auntie Susan sat in the corner, peeling yam on a weathered wooden stool, her piercing eyes locking onto him the instant he entered. "Where have you been?" she snapped, her voice cutting through the quiet like a whip. I sold all the oranges, Auntie," Kingsley stammered, his hands shaking as he held out the crumpled notes, his legs buckling beneath him. Without a word, she snatched the money from his hand and counted it swiftly, her lips curling in disdain. "This is what you bring me?" she hissed, her tone dripping with scorn. "You think I sent you out just to come crawling back with this pitiful change?" "I sold everything, Auntie. The money is all there," Kingsley whispered, his voice trembling. He didn't know what else to say. He had tried his hardest, but his best would never be enough for her. Before Kingsley could react, Auntie Susan grabbed the cane resting beside her stool and rose to her feet. The fear in his eyes was instant, and he took a tentative step back, but the cramped room offered no escape. "You lazy, useless boy," she roared, swinging the cane down with vicious force. The first strike landed across his back, sharp and searing. He cried out, but she didn't pause. Again and again the cane slammed into his fragile body, each blow driving him closer to the breaking point. By the time she stopped, Kingsley was crumpled on the floor, his small frame shaking with silent sobs. Auntie Susan tossed the cane aside and spat on the ground, her face contorted with rage. "Now go to bed," she snapped, her voice cold. "And don't even think about eating tonight, useless child." Kingsley didn't argue. He knew better than to protest. It only made things worse. Slowly he pushed himself up, his legs unsteady, and limped to the corner of the room where he usually slept. There was no mattress, no blanket, just the cold, unforgiving floor. He lay there, his thin arms wrapped tightly around his aching stomach, trying to shut out the pain. But sleep eluded him. His body throbbed with every movement, and the gnawing hunger inside him was an ache that wouldn't subside. The house had fallen into a heavy silence, broken only by the occasional creak of the wood as the wind blew outside. The faint sound of Auntie Susan's snoring drifted from her room, a sound that stirred both relief and resentment in Kingsley's heart. As the night stretched on, his hunger gnawed at him relentlessly. He couldn't remember the last time he had eaten a proper meal. His thoughts wandered to Mama Deborah, the kind elderly woman who lived a few houses down. She had always shown him kindness, sneaking him pieces of bread or roasted corn whenever Auntie Susan wasn't looking. The thought of food was too tempting to resist. He sat up slowly, his heart racing. What if Auntie Susan woke up? What if she caught him sneaking out? The mere thought sent a chill down his spine, but his hunger overpowered his fear. With great care, Kingsley stood and tiptoed toward the door. His breath caught in his chest, eyes darting anxiously toward Auntie Susan's room. When he reached the door, he eased it open just enough to slip through. The cool night air hit his face like a breath of freedom, a brief reprieve from the stifling heat of the house. He ran as fast as his legs could carry him, his bare feet pounding the dirt road. He didn't stop until he reached Mama Deborah's house. Standing at her door, hesitation gripped him. What if she was angry? What if she refused to help? But his hunger pushed him forward, and with trembling hands, he knocked softly on the wooden door. Moments passed, and then the sound of footsteps inside. The door creaked open, and Mama Deborah's kind, weathered face appeared in the soft glow of her lantern. "Kingsley, what are you doing here at this hour?" she asked, her voice thick with concern. "I'm sorry, Mama Deborah," Kingsley whispered, tears streaming down his face. "I'm so hungry, I haven't eaten all day." Her face softened instantly, her heart breaking at the sight of him. "Oh, my poor child, come inside," she said, swinging the door open wider. Kingsley stepped into her small, cozy room, his stomach growling loudly. He looked down, embarrassed, as the sound echoed through the quiet night. Mama Deborah noticed his discomfort and placed a gentle hand on his shoulder. "Sit down, Kingsley. Let me get you something to eat," she said softly. He sank onto a small wooden stool near the table, his eyes following her every movement as she uncovered a pot and carefully served him a portion of yam. She added a bit of stew and placed the plate in front of him. "Eat, my child," she murmured, her voice full of warmth. Kingsley didn't need any further encouragement. His hands shook as he picked up the food and he began to eat, tears streaming down his face. Each bite filled his empty stomach, but it was more than just the food. It was the tenderness, the feeling of being cared for, even if only for a brief moment. Mama Deborah watched him in silence, her heart heavy with sorrow. She had seen how Auntie Susan treated the boy, but she often felt powerless to help. Yet she did what she could, offering him what little comfort she had. When Kingsley finally set the plate down, his eyes swollen from crying, he looked up at her and whispered, "Thank you, Ma. Thank you so much." She smiled softly, placing a hand on his head. "You're always welcome here, Kingsley. You're a good boy and God sees your struggles. He will make a way for you, my child." Her words, though simple, brought a faint comfort to his broken heart. For the first time that day, a glimmer of hope stirred within him. But deep down, he knew he couldn't stay. If Auntie Susan discovered he was missing, the punishment would be even worse. Reluctantly, Kingsley stood, his voice thick with regret. "I have to go now. Thank you again, Ma." She nodded, her eyes filled with concern. "Be careful, Kingsley, and remember, you can always come to me if you need anything." He nodded silently, stepping out into the cool night, his heart heavier than before but carrying with him a flicker of hope. His stomach was finally full, but the heaviness in his heart seemed to weigh him down even more. The road home stretched out before him, longer and more suffocating than ever, each step carrying the crushing burden of his life. As he neared the house, he paused, his eyes drawn to the faint glow of light spilling from the window. He didn't know how much longer he could endure this life, but for now, there was no choice but to keep going. With a deep sigh, he pushed open the door and stepped inside, the cold, unforgiving floor greeting him like a familiar enemy. He lay down once more, his body aching, his heart heavy, but his stomach finally at ease. As sleep began to pull him under, his mind drifted back to thoughts of his parents, the love, the warmth, the safety he had once known. Would he ever feel that sense of peace again? He couldn't say, but for now, survival was all he could focus on. The next morning, Kingsley was jolted awake by the all-too-familiar sound of Auntie Susan's voice booming his name. His body screamed in protest, sore from the previous night's beating, but he forced himself to rise. He knew better than to keep her waiting. "Kingsley, you better get out here now, lazy boy," she shouted. Stumbling in, rubbing his tired eyes, he found Auntie Susan standing there with a tray of oranges. Her face was tight with impatience. "Take this and go sell them. Don't you dare come back without selling every last one, and if you think last night was bad, just wait and see what happens today." Kingsley nodded silently, his voice barely a whisper. "Yes, Auntie." He adjusted the tray on his head, then stepped out into the harsh morning sunlight, the weight of both the tray and his life pressing on him once more. The weight of the oranges on his head was nothing compared to the burden in his heart. As Kingsley trudged through the dusty streets of the village, his weak voice called out, "Oranges for sale! Sweet oranges!" But the villagers barely spared him a glance, their indifference cutting deeper than the hunger clawing at his stomach. Desperation made him raise his voice, shouting louder, but still no one stopped. The day dragged on painfully, and by midday he hadn't sold a single orange. The relentless sun blazed overhead, its heat scorching his skin, his throat parched and dry. His stomach growled in protest and his legs wobbled beneath him, trembling with exhaustion. Eventually he found a shady spot beneath a tree and set the tray down, tears stinging his eyes. "What am I gonna do?" he whispered to himself, his voice shaking. He could already hear Auntie Susan's angry voice in his head, the sting of her cane vivid in his memory. She wouldn't listen to excuses. She never did. She would beat him again, harder this time, and the thought filled him with dread. As fear consumed him, Kingsley's thoughts turned to his mother. He missed her desperately. Her warmth, her love, the way she could make everything feel better with just a smile. But now, he was alone, and the tears he'd been holding back finally spilled over. Attention, please. Dear viewers, as you continue to watch, kindly share your opinion on this story and tell us which country you are watching from. Also, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this video to your loved ones. Thank you so much. With a heavy heart, Kingsley picked up the tray and began walking toward the cemetery. He didn't fully understand why, but being near his mother's grave brought him a small, fleeting comfort, as if her spirit were still watching over him. When he arrived, he knelt by the unmarked mound of earth, setting the tray down beside him. The sight of her resting place made the ache in his chest unbearable, and fresh tears streamed down his face. "Mama," he whispered, his voice trembling, I really tried, but no one bought any oranges today. Auntie Susan is going to beat me again. I don't know what to do." His small body shook as he sobbed, his hands clutching at the dry, cracked earth. "I miss you so much, Mama. Why did you and Papa leave me? I don't have anyone anymore. I don't want to stay with Auntie Susan. She doesn't love me." She hurts me." His cries echoed softly in the quiet of the cemetery, a child's pain carried on the wind to a world that seemed deaf to his suffering. Benjamin curled up on the ground beside the grave, the cool earth pressing against his fevered skin. It soothed him, offering the smallest comfort in his moment of despair. With his eyes tightly shut, he whispered, "Mama, please help me. I'm so tired. I just want to be with you." The exhaustion from the day, the hunger, and the weight of his loneliness consumed him, and before long he drifted into sleep. In his dreams, the harshness of his life melted away. He saw his mother's radiant smile, heard her melodic laughter, and felt his father's strong arms lifting him high into the sky as he squealed with joy. They were together again, a family whole and happy, a fleeting moment of peace that wrapped around him like a warm blanket. But when he awoke, reality returned like a cruel thief, stealing the comfort of his dream and replacing it with the cold, unyielding truth of the graveyard. The sun had sunk lower, painting the sky in hues of orange and pink. He rubbed his eyes groggily and turned toward the tray to pick it up, but froze mid-matement. The tray was empty. The oranges were gone. "No, no, no," Kingsley whispered, his voice trembling with panic. His chest tightened as he frantically scanned the ground around him. Where are they? Where did they go? His heart pounded as his gaze darted in every direction, but there was no sign of the missing oranges. And then something caught his eye. A small bundle of carefully folded Naira notes, resting neatly in the tray where the oranges had been. His hands shook as he picked it up and began counting. To his astonishment, the money was the exact amount he would have made if he had sold every single orange. Kingsley's mind raced. Who could have done this? Who would take the oranges but leave the money? The cemetery was silent, the only sound the gentle rustle of leaves in the breeze. The air felt different, charged with an energy he couldn't quite explain. His eyes drifted back to his mother's grave, and his voice wavered as he whispered, "Mama, was this you?" A chill coursed through him, raising the tiny hairs on the back of his neck. He stared at the grave, his thoughts swirling in confusion and wonder. Terror mixed with an unshakable sense of calm, as though someone, something, had been watching over him. For the first time in what felt like forever, Kingsley felt a flicker of hope. A part of him dared to believe that his mother's love still lingered, protecting him in ways he couldn't understand. Kingsley sat for what felt like hours, clutching the money tightly in his trembling hands. Tears rolled down his cheeks, a torrent of gratitude and confusion overwhelming his heart. "Thank you, Mama," he whispered, his voice cracking with emotion. "Thank you." But the relief that flooded his chest was fleeting, overshadowed by the dread of what awaited him at home. He knew Auntie Susan would never believe the truth of what had happened. She would accuse him of lying, or worse, stealing. The thought of her rage sent a cold shiver down his spine. With the sun dipping lower into the horizon, Kingsley wiped his tears, slipping the bundle of notes into his pocket. Picking up the empty tray, he began the slow, agonizing walk back to the house. Every step felt heavier than the last, his mind replaying the strange events at the cemetery in an endless loop. By the time he reached the house, twilight had settled, painting the sky in muted shades of blue and gray. Kingsley paused at the door, his heart hammering against his ribs. From inside, Auntie Susan's voice carried through the wooden door, sharp and impatient. It made his stomach churn with fear. Summoning every ounce of courage, he took a deep breath, pushed the door open, and stepped inside. "Kingsley!" Auntie Susan's voice sliced through the air like a whip. "You're late again. Did you sell everything?" Kingsley nodded quickly, extending the money with shaky hands. "Yes, Auntie, I sold everything," he said, trying to keep his voice steady. She snatched the bundle from his hands, her eyes narrowing as she counted the notes, her fingers moving with practiced speed. After a long pause, she let out a dismissive grunt. "At least you didn't come back empty-handed this time," she muttered. Her tone was cold, but lacked the sharp edge he had braced himself for. Now get to the kitchen and clean up. You're useless for anything else." "Yes, Auntie," Kingsley murmured, a wave of relief washing over him. For once she hadn't raised her cane. But even as he turned away to head for the kitchen, his thoughts remained tangled. The strange events at the graveyard lingered in his mind, an unanswered mystery. The gratitude in his heart mixed with a gnawing sense of wonder and the faintest flicker of hope. As Kingsley scrubbed the kitchen floor that evening, a strange feeling clung to him like a shadow, an unshakable sense that something extraordinary had happened. He couldn't explain it, but deep within, he believed his mother had answered his desperate cries. The thought warmed him, a flicker of light piercing through the darkness that had surrounded him for so long. For the first time in what felt like forever, Kingsley felt a faint spark of hope. Maybe, just maybe, he wasn't as alone as he had always thought. The next morning, that small spark was smothered by the weight of reality. Kingsley woke up weaker than ever, his empty stomach growling like a feral beast. He struggled to rise from the cold, unforgiving floor, his frail body aching from the hunger, the fear, and the endless beatings. Every movement felt like lifting the weight of the world. "Kingsley, come here!" Auntie Susan's sharp voice cut through the quiet house like a blade. Dragging his feet across the floor, he shuffled to her side, where she stood with her perpetual scowl, holding the tray of oranges. "Take this and go sell," she barked, thrusting the tray into his trembling hands. "And if you don't come back with money today, you'll see what I'll do to you." "Useless boy." Her eyes narrowed, her words dripping with disdain. Kingsley didn't respond. He had no energy to argue, no fight left in him. Balancing the heavy tray on his head, his knees wobbled under its weight, but he kept moving. Without another word, he stepped outside into the glaring morning sun. The village buzzed with life as he walked the dusty streets, his voice barely rising above a whisper. Sweet oranges for sale," he called weakly, his tone so faint it dissolved into the air. The villagers passed him by without a second glance, their indifference adding to the invisible weight he carried. By midday, Kingsley couldn't go on. Hunger gnawed at him like a relentless predator, and his body felt as though it might crumble beneath him. He set the tray down beside the road and sank onto a small rock, his head hanging low. His vision blurred as tears filled his eyes, spilling down his cheeks. The world around him felt vast, uncaring, and cruel, while he seemed so impossibly small, a forgotten child in its shadow. "I can't do this anymore," he whispered, his voice trembling with despair. He looked up at the sky, the tears streaking his dusty face. "Mama," he choked out, his voice cracking. "I'm so tired. I'm so hungry." The words hung in the air, unanswered, as though they dissolved into the sky itself. With no one else to turn to, Kingsley rose shakily to his feet, wiping his face with the back of his hand. He needed solace, even if only for a moment. His heart heavy and his steps dragging, he headed toward the one place where he felt a glimmer of peace, his mother's grave. With trembling hands, Kingsley picked up the tray and began the slow, arduous journey to the cemetery. His legs felt like they might buckle beneath him at any moment, but he pressed on, each step fueled by a fragile determination. When he finally reached his mother's grave, he knelt down and placed the tray beside him. "Mama," he whispered, his voice barely audible, thick with despair. "I'm hungry. I'm so hungry. Auntie Susan didn't give me anything to eat, and I don't have the strength to sell these oranges. I don't know what to do." His shoulders quivered as tears streamed down his face, his small hands clutching the dry earth like it could somehow hold him together. The weight of hunger and sadness consumed him, and slowly, he lay down on the cool ground beside the grave. The breeze stirred the leaves in the trees above, whispering softly around him. He closed his eyes, letting the exhaustion take over, as if lying near his mother could bring him the solace he so desperately needed. When Kingsley woke, the sky was painted with shades of twilight. He sat up groggily, rubbing his eyes, and turned toward the tray. His heart jolted. The oranges were gone. The tray, once full, now sat empty, just like the day before. But there, neatly placed in the tray, was a small bundle of crumpled Naira notes. His hand shook as he reached for it, his fingers fumbling to count. It was the exact amount he would have earned, selling all the oranges. But this time there was more. Beside the grave, on a flat stone, sat a plate of steaming jollof rice topped with a large piece of fried fish. The rich aroma wafted through the air, and Kingsley's stomach growled fiercely in response. His eyes widened in disbelief. He scanned the graveyard, his heart pounding in his chest. The place was silent, save for the rustling of leaves in the breeze. Who put this here?" he whispered, his voice trembling as he stared at the plate. "Mama? Was it you?" The sight filled him with a mix of awe and unease. He couldn't explain it, couldn't fathom how it was possible, but the hunger gnawing at him was stronger than his confusion. Tentatively, he reached for the plate, his hand still shaking. The rice was warm, perfectly cooked, its fragrant spices mingling with the tang of tomatoes. Kingsley hesitated, his eyes darting around once more. There was no one, just him, the food, and his mother's grave. Tears welled up in his eyes as he whispered, "Thank you, Mama," and brought the first bite to his mouth. The flavors exploded on his tongue, rich and satisfying, each bite more overwhelming than the last. He couldn't stop the tears rolling down his cheeks as he ate. It had been so long since he'd tasted food like this, so long since he felt this fleeting sense of care and comfort. Each bite felt like a lifeline, a fleeting moment of comfort in the sea of his pain. As Kingsley ate, a strange warmth blossomed in his chest, a sensation he couldn't explain. It was as if his mother's presence surrounded him, wrapping him in an invisible embrace, ensuring he was cared for. The fear that had gripped him earlier ebbed away, replaced by an unexplainable calm. When the plate was empty, he gently placed it back on the flat rock and sat in stillness, letting the peace linger. As the last bite disappeared, Kingsley placed the plate back on the rock and stared at his mother's grave, his heart full of gratitude and wonder. Whatever had happened, he felt her presence stronger than ever, a quiet assurance that he was not alone. The sky deepened with the hues of evening, signaling it was time to leave, yet Kingsley hesitated. Beside his mother's grave, he felt a safety he hadn't known in years, a fragile cocoon of love and belonging. With a heavy heart, he finally stood, picking up the tray with the money tucked inside. He glanced back one last time. "Thank you, Mama," he whispered, his voice trembling with emotion. "I don't know how, but I know it's you. I love you." As he trudged back home, his mind swirled with questions. Who was leaving the money? Who had cooked the food? Was it truly his mother's spirit reaching out to him? Or was there someone silently watching over him from the shadows? The thoughts were both comforting and unnerving, filling him with a mix of awe and uncertainty. Whatever the truth, one thing was clear. Something extraordinary was happening, and it was keeping him alive. When Kingsley finally reached the house, Auntie Susan was waiting for him, her arms crossed and her expression as sharp as ever. "You're late again," she barked, her eyes narrowing. "Where's the money?" Kingsley quickly handed her the crumpled Naira notes. She counted them carefully, her lips pursed in approval. "At least you didn't mess this up," she muttered, tucking the money away. "Now go clean the kitchen before you sleep." "Yes, Auntie," he replied softly, his voice subdued but steady. His stomach was full, yet his heart felt heavy under the weight of the day. That evening, as he scrubbed the kitchen floor, his thoughts kept drifting back to the graveyard. The vanishing oranges, the plate of food, the mysterious money. He had no answers, only questions. But deep within him, he held on to the unshakable belief that his mother was still with him, watching over him in ways he couldn't yet comprehend. And for now, that small glimmer of hope was enough to keep him going. Did you enjoy this story? What stood out for you in the story? Did you learn something? Please share your thoughts in the comments and tell us which country you are watching from. Don't forget to give me a like, subscribe to this channel and hit the notification bell so you get notified when the next video is out. Thank you so much for watching. Click on the video link on your screen now to watch part 2 to this story.